people in this country on the Constitution and instead taking their oath on the Quran? How can you have a congresswoman implementing and upholding U.S. law when she is taking her oath on the Quran, which is the supremacist ideology of Islam? Islam is incompatible with the Western civilization. Islam is incompatible with the United States Constitution, okay? You can't be a representative and call yourself a Muslim American representative and take your oath on the Quran. In the United States of America, the United States Constitution is the supreme law of the land. In Islam, okay, the word of the Quran and Sharia law is supreme law. So how can you have two supreme laws? It doesn't work that way. And you're not a racist for saying this stuff. You're not a racist. This is logical. If the United States law and legal system is that the United States Constitution is the supreme legal code in this country that all lawmakers who are elected to office must uphold, how can Muslims serve in Congress or serve in any position in government if they are taking their oath to Sharia law? Especially when you read the Quran, and I don't know how many of you have, it calls for full-blown supremacy and conquering of civilizations. Supremacy over all non-Muslims. Here in the United States of America, we have freedom of religion, freedom of association, okay? We have religious tolerance. There is no religious tolerance in Islam, okay? Ilhan Omar comes to the United States from Somalia and she complains that we are so terrible, that we are so awful, and we are so unjust. Well, if Ilhan Omar wasn't a Muslim and she were to go to Somalia and try to be elected as a Christian or a Jew, or even just try to live in society as a Christian or a Jew, what do you think would happen? You think you can go to Saudi Arabia and demand tolerance and demand that you get to build your own church or demand your own synagogue? No, they will literally kill you in some of these countries. They don't believe in religious tolerance. And so instead of reading the Quran and looking at these government documents like the explanatory memorandum, and instead of having these conversations and looking at passages from the Quran, you have the media smearing people because it is so much easier to tell a lie than to actually be a journalist and do some research. And it's destroying our country. It's destroying our country. The lies and the vitriol and the propaganda that the media is spewing is really destroying our country. Ask people, why do Muslims want to take over the United States? I think I've covered that. The explanatory memorandum really goes into that more. Went over that. Have you worked with any of the recent people going to college about creating awareness? Candace Owens, Charlie Kirk. To be honest, I haven't really been invited to any Turning Point USA events. They won't invite me because there's a lot of people within the Republican Party and Republican establishment that because of the defamation and because of all of this kind of ban by association that the social media companies have done, they have not only damaged my ability to make a living, but they've damaged my ability to even get content across or even function in society because they make people fear you. Right? Why would people want to invite me to events, or why would people want to associate with me when Facebook and Twitter is threatening to shut them down and designate them as a terrorist? Recent studies have shown that 75% of employers look at a potential or prospective employee's social media accounts before they hire them. Do you know how much of a disadvantage people are going to be in this country if they're banned on social media, or if the social media companies are branding them as dangerous individuals? This is a serious issue. This is not just a free speech issue. This is a civil rights issue. And you talk about discrimination and you talk about paying reparations, right? You want to talk about paying reparations to people who were subjected to slavery? Well, what kind of implications do you think it's going to have on a young person in America as we continue to become a more digitally or technologically dependent society, and these big tech social media companies, which are now more powerful than the president himself, and I say that because they are censoring the president, They have released reports. They've released a report at Twitter 2 weeks ago that said that they're going to be hiding President Trump's tweets that they find offensive. Well, you might as well just delete his account because they find everything he says offensive. It's a civil rights issue, and this is why there needs to be more leadership in the Republican Party, and even on the left, right? This is something that Democrats and Republicans should be coming together, and it is so crazy that here I am as a Republican having to fight harder for this than the liberals, because you used to hear liberals in this country talk about free speech and protesting, right? And now it's the conservatives who are fighting for free speech in this country because the left has become so totalitarian in their quest to just shut down everybody. You know, and I have many friends in here who are trying to do their own work in activism, and they've all been banned. Marnie, my friend, has been banned on Facebook and shut down. I believe Michelle has also. I see George over there. George has an organization called Third Rail Talk. They do amazing work. You want to hear a story really quick? George did an investigation into Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center. The Islamic Center I was telling you about. Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center is probably responsible for a majority of the ISIS recruits in Minneapolis. Their imam is personal friends with Keith Ellison. They trespassed me. I just went in there to ask them a simple question and they called the police on me. Now I'm never allowed to go back, even though they are literally recruiting for a terrorist organization. George did an investigation showing how the mosque was violating city code. And every so often, all these cars would come in and they would park their cars in the property or on the property of non-Muslim taxpayer citizens and residents of Minnesota. If this were to be a conservative organization, you bet the police would be out there in a second ticketing people and they'd be shutting the event down. But this is happening and it grows. The numbers and the presence of these individuals attending this ISIS-tied mosque grow every day. Georgia's investigation didn't even highlight the fact that these people were attending a mosque that had tied to ISIS. He didn't even really mention the word Muslim at all. He didn't even really say the word Islam. He just said mosque, and he talked about it in terms of city code. He wasn't talking in an inflammatory way. It was just pure journalism, okay? Well, what happened is when George published this video, and people started to complain, there was this left-wing organization. And all these left-winger groups in the community, right, they align themselves with Antifa, they're all radical. They wrote a letter to Keith Ellison's office, and they wrote it on a holiday weekend, on a Friday. And they said, there's this guy who published this report, and it's so threatening, and I'm so worried about the safety of the attendees of the mosque, and I'm just worried it needs to be shut down. Can you help? Not only did Keith Ellison's office reply, but they replied immediately. If you look at the day, and I have copies of the emails because I published this report on my website, the email was sent on a Friday before a holiday weekend, and Keith Ellison's office replied the same weekend on official letterhead from within the Attorney General's office. I thought that government offices were closed on the weekend. Why is an Attorney General's office replying about a mosque, a video critical of a mosque, breaking the law on a weekend, let alone a holiday weekend? And it was sent out immediately. Well, what did this letter say? It was an official letter from the Attorney General's office of Minnesota, and your Attorney General is a Muslim, just like Ilhan Omar. And he gave this left-wing organization and the ISIS-tied mosque called Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center the personal contact information for the CEO of YouTube, with a list of instructions on how they could report independent, conservative, Christian journalists to YouTube to get them totally banned from the internet. So you have an Attorney General's office working to aid an ISIS-tied mosque. The FBI has published a report saying that most of these men joining ISIS are tied to Dar al-Farouk Islamic Center, okay? And he's telling them how to ban Christian journalists who are just trying to make Minnesota more safe. You have a serious problem here in Minnesota, and I don't hear anybody in the Republican Party speaking up. I haven't heard anybody, I don't know if this died. I haven't heard anybody in the Republican Party, I don't need it, I'm loud enough. I'm pretty loud, just ask Keith Ellison. You have a serious problem here in Minnesota. And the fact that the Republican Party isn't doing anything to combat this, the fact that the Republican Party, nobody in the Republican Party has filed an ethics complaint against Keith Ellison's office for aiding an ISIS-tied mosque in deplatforming and censoring, violating the constitutional rights of a Christian journalist who fled his country because of religious persecution. Okay? You can tell your story too, George. George is in the back of there. This is a serious problem. And George doesn't have a huge following like I do. You know, he has a pretty popular following in Minnesota because he does good work. But what I'm saying is if they're going to do it to me, they're going to do it to you. And there are people in this room who have had it happen to them. Marnie has done good activism. Okay, Marnie, you can stand up. She's done really great work. And Marnie has done... News last week. Stand up, Michelle. Michelle helped lead the protest. Michelle helped lead the protest at the, I think it was the city hall office or one of these local government offices last week when they were trying to get rid of the pledge. And you know, Josh is in the audience too. He's a contributor for my website. And we have evidence to believe that Ilhan Omar was responsible for getting rid of the pledge in Minneapolis. Right. You have these people who are doing great work and they're taking the initiative and they're putting their lives and their careers on the line in their own communities and they themselves are being shut down. It's not just me. So when they say it's a right-wing conspiracy or Laura Loomer has been so provocative and she said such hateful things about Muslims or she's a racist, no, because even if I were to go away tomorrow and never talk again and never do any more activism or journalism, it's going to happen to another person who dares to speak up. It could be you, it could be Barney, it could be Josh, Michelle, George, it could be your kids, your grandkids, anybody. So you need to demand that the Republican Party wake up. You know, you need to, and I hate to say don't give them any money, but you know, you get all these phone calls. I get so many phone calls from the Republican Party telling me to give money. Why would I want to give money to a Republican Party? I'll just give my money to President Trump because I know President Trump is actually going to do something. Right? I'm not trying to sabotage the Republican Party. But when the Republican Party calls me and they ask me for money, I say, what are you doing with my money? You should be giving me money. Honestly. I mean, you should be giving money to the activists and the grassroots coordinators in your community who are actually fighting for the president's agenda. I'm going to give my money to a candidate who I support directly, or I'm just going to give it to Donald Trump directly, because I don't want you giving my money to useless candidates, especially a lot of these candidates who ran last time around in the Minnesota election, who really aren't going to do anything. I don't want to give my money to cowards who are going to be more afraid of having a hit piece written about them, or more afraid of offending Muslims than standing up for American citizens, tax-paying citizens. And so that's all the questions. I hope that you learned a lot during this talk tonight. I hope that I can keep coming back to Minnesota. And I hope that the media starts to report on this. And you know, I hope and I pray every single day, not just for myself, but for people all around the country. Because Minnesota really is ground zero for where this Islamification and the takeover is taking place. And I hope that the Republican Party, I know that they sent some reps here tonight. You know, I don't care if they're offended, you know, because they need to wake up. People are suffering, people are getting killed, our nation is at risk, okay? It's a national security threat, and they need to make a decision. And if they are more concerned about offending Muslim migrants and offending Somalis who can't even vote, but are voting illegally anyway, right? And I'm not saying all of these people are here illegally. I'm saying a lot of them are. And I'm saying a lot of these people can't vote, but they are voting anyway. And there's documented instances of this. If they are more concerned about offending them, and more concerned about what people like Ilhan Omar and Keith Ellison, who have on the record associations with terrorist organizations, are going to say, then they shouldn't even run. They should just get out of office, and they should let somebody who actually does have the balls to stand up for the American people to run. Because they're wasting time, they're wasting money, they're wasting space. And it's time for the Republican Party to have candidates, run candidates, especially here in Minnesota, who are going to fight for the people and not care about political correctness. Because Ilhan Omar doesn't care about political correctness, and she is now the loudest voice in Congress with AOC. So So you have to call. All of you have to call your representatives and you have to put pressure on them. Whether it's through protesting, emailing them, calling them, who knows, right? You got to do it though, because this is a solution. And we have to let people know that this is what we want. Because, like I said, President Trump is one man. He's doing a great job. He's doing an incredible job. I think he really is honestly the best president we've ever had, probably ever will have. But he's one man. He can't do it all on his own. These Republican representatives, whether it be in Minnesota, whether it be where I live in Florida, wherever, right? I'm not beating up on them. I'm just saying they need to be a bit more aggressive. Because look at the left. They don't care about optics. They don't care about offending people. They're denying the Holocaust from the halls of Congress. And nothing's happening to them. So trust me when I say that if you start speaking up and you start being a voice for the people in your community and raising awareness about these issues, right, more people will come to defend you. Look at members of the establishment right now criticizing President Trump for telling Ilhan Omar to go back to where she came from. The American people loved it. Okay, everybody wants Omar to go back to where she came from. But people are more concerned about, oh, it's racist. Oh, it's offensive. Oh, it's going to make immigrants feel unwelcome. Well, what about the fact that Americans are offended? What about the fact that Jewish people feel abandoned in this country because nobody in the Democrat Party will stand up and say that Holocaust denial is inappropriate? Okay? What about the Christians in this country who don't have a voice? I don't see anyone in Congress talking about the fact that Christians are the most persecuted people in the world. Right? What about us? Do they care about us, or do they only care about these enemy combatants who have made their way inside of Congress? So on that note, I know we've been going on for about 2.5 hours now, but you know, it's great. It's good information, and hopefully you learned a lot. And you know, take the information I gave you tonight and go use it. Of whether my livelihood is destroyed or not, I'm going to keep speaking up and keep fighting for people. And you know, it's not about money. Our country is on the line right now. But you know, thank you for your support, and I really do appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
Before everybody leaves, I just want to make a special thank you to all of you, because I know it was hard to come here tonight when all the publicity is bad and we had the TV station across the street. I can't imagine for 4 hours plus at a loss that we can have TV station. I also want to take a moment to thank again Voters Alliance, John Bush Society, Freedom Fighters, Understanding the Islamic Life, most important, I want to tell you, we're going to have more of that. About 2 months, we're going to try to take her on a so that's a couple months, looking forward to getting back. And last but not least, we are having allowed to be here on September 28th, and he will have a banquet, and he will have a banquet and here in our allowed to speak. And I want to thank you.
Quite a getting.